Everything I have been building towards since February 20th converges here. 10 days ago, Saturn met Neptune and something crystallized. 9 days ago, I walked you through how Mercury retrograde was going to test that clarity. 8 days ago, the Pisces field thickened and everything went underwater. 6 days ago, Mars squared Uranus and something cracked open. 4 days ago, I explained what a lunar eclipse actually does, the mechanics, the geometry, the removal of borrowed light. 2 days ago, I gave you your personal map, the house where the eclipse searchlight is pointed in your specific chart. And now, today, Eclipse Eve, March 2nd. The last day before the pattern I have been tracking reaches its peak expression. Tomorrow, the lunar eclipse falls at 12 degrees Virgo, and today, the day before, is going to be harder than tomorrow. I want to explain why, because understanding Eclipse Eves changes how you navigate them. Here is what I have observed across every eclipse season I have tracked since 2018. The day before a lunar eclipse has a consistent quality that is different from the eclipse itself and different from the days surrounding it. Eclipse Eve is the day of maximum resistance. The thing that is about to end, the pattern that is about to be illuminated, the borrowed light that is about to be removed, does not go quietly. It surges, it reasserts itself, like a fever spiking before it breaks, like a storm intensifying in the final hour before it clears. The old pattern sends its strongest signal right before it loses its hold. I have seen this manifest in specific ways that repeat across eclipses. Relationships that are about to shift have their most intense arguments on Eclipse Eve. Health patterns that are about to change produce their most acute symptoms the day before. Career decisions that are about to clarify feel most confusing 24 hours out. The anxiety that peaks today is not about tomorrow. It is the old pattern fighting to survive, and the intensity of the resistance is proportional to the significance of what is ending. If today feels mild, the eclipse is fine-tuning. If today feels overwhelming, the eclipse is restructuring something fundamental. There is a reason for this pattern, and it maps onto something observable in other domains. Think about what happens in the final hours before a significant transition in any system. A company about to undergo a major reorganization sees its most dysfunctional behaviors intensify in the weeks before the change is announced. Not because things are getting worse, because the old system can feel the approaching end, and it is generating maximum output before it loses power. An addiction produces its strongest cravings right before the decision to quit solidifies. The craving is not evidence that quitting is wrong. It is evidence that the pattern knows its time is running out. Eclipse Eve operates by the same mechanism. The pattern that has been running on borrowed light can feel the approaching shadow, and it pushes harder, louder, more insistently. Today you may feel an intense pull toward exactly the behavior, the relationship dynamic, the habit, the thought pattern that the eclipse is about to illuminate as ready for release. That pull is not guidance, it is resistance, and the resistance is the clearest signal yet that the eclipse has already started its work in your field, even before the astronomical event perfects tomorrow. Now I want to add a layer, because something else is happening today that most content will not connect to the eclipse. Mars enters Pisces, the planet of action, drive, aggression, will, and forward motion, moves into the sign of water, surrender, dissolution, and the absence of boundaries. Mars in Pisces is one of the most misunderstood transits in astrology. Most content frames it as Mars weakened, the warrior in enemy territory, action dissolved, drive confused. And there is truth in that surface reading. Mars does not operate at its usual frequency in Pisces. The direct, sharp, goal-oriented energy of Mars becomes diffused, nonlinear, harder to focus. But the deeper reading is more interesting and more useful. Mars in Pisces does not eliminate action. It changes what effective action looks like. In fire signs, Mars acts through force. In earth signs, through persistence. In air signs, through strategy. In water signs, Mars acts through surrender, not passive surrender, not giving up. Surrender as in releasing the grip on the specific outcome, letting the action flow toward its natural target instead of forcing it toward the target your mind selected. Mars in Pisces says the strongest move right now might be the softest one. The most effective action might look like non-action. And the way forward might be to stop paddling and let the current carry you. The timing of Mars entering Pisces on Eclipse Eve is not coincidental in the astrological sense. It sets the tone for how to navigate the eclipse itself. Most people approach eclipses with Mars in Aries energy. What do I do? How do I protect myself? What action do I take? What intentions do I set? Active, direct, force-based responses to a celestial event. Mars in Pisces on the eve of the eclipse is saying something different. It is saying the eclipse does not need your help. The borrowed light is being removed whether you act or not. The pattern is being illuminated whether you set intentions or not. Your job is not to direct the eclipse. Your job is to receive what it shows you. And receiving requires softness, open hands, Mars in Pisces hands, not clenched fists demanding the universe cooperate with your timeline. I want to sit with this paradox for a moment because it applies far beyond astrology. There are times in life when the most powerful thing you can do is stop doing. When the project has been planned and prepared and all the pieces are in place, and the only thing preventing the outcome is your refusal to let go of the steering wheel. Mars in Aries grabs the wheel harder. Mars in Pisces opens the hand. And the thing that was trying to happen, the thing that was always going to happen, happens. Not because you forced it, because you stopped preventing it. I have watched people sabotage perfect timing by insisting on controlling the final moment. The job offer that was coming, but they sent one too many follow-up emails and created doubt. The relationship that was healing, but they pushed for one more conversation and reopened the wound. The creative project that was ready to land, but they added one more revision and killed the original spark. Mars in Pisces on Eclipse Eve is the sky telling you to put the pen down. The essay is done. Stop editing. Let it land. There is a historical parallel I find instructive. In Japanese martial arts, there is a concept called zanshin, which translates roughly as remaining mind or continuing awareness. It refers to the state of complete alertness that a practitioner maintains after completing a technique. The action is finished. The strike has landed. But the warrior does not relax into inattention. They maintain a state of open readiness. Not tense, not aggressive, alert, receptive, aware of what happens next without trying to control it. That is Mars in Pisces at its highest expression. The action has been taken. The sequence has been built. The 10 days of transit work since February 20th have done their job. And now, Mars in Pisces says, maintain awareness without exerting force. Watch. Receive. Let the eclipse do its work and be ready for what it reveals. There is a physical layer to eclipse eves that I want to name because it catches people off guard. The 24 hours before a lunar eclipse often produce somatic symptoms that have no obvious medical cause. Headaches that arrive without trigger and leave without treatment. Digestive disruption. Sleep disturbance, either insomnia or excessive sleepiness. A feeling of pressure in the chest or solar plexus that is not anxiety in the clinical sense, but feels like something pressing from the inside. Joint aches. A sudden drop in energy followed by a surge. Heart palpitations. I am not a medical professional, and I am not suggesting you ignore symptoms that concern you. If something feels medically significant, treat it medically. But I am saying that across every eclipse season I have tracked, the 24 hours before the exact eclipse produce physical symptoms in a significant percentage of the people I monitor. And those symptoms resolve within 48 hours of the eclipse perfecting without intervention. The body registers the approaching energetic shift before the mind makes sense of it. If you feel physically strange today, note it. Track what happens to those symptoms after the eclipse passes tomorrow. The correlation is worth your attention. Mars entering Pisces also interacts with Mercury retrograde in a specific way I want to flag. Mercury is retrograde at 16 degrees Pisces. Mars enters Pisces today. Within days, Mars will be moving through the same sign as retrograde Mercury. Two planets in Pisces, one moving backward, one moving forward, in the same water. When Mars and retrograde Mercury share a sign, particularly a water sign, the communication disruptions of the retrograde take on a more urgent, more emotional quality. Messages sent during this period carry more heat than intended. Words land harder than they sound in your head. The gap between what you mean and what is heard, which Mercury retrograde in Pisces has already been widening since February 25th, now has Mars energy in it, which means the miscommunication does not just confuse, it wounds. If you have been avoiding a difficult conversation, the next 2 weeks are not the time to have it impulsively. Mars in Pisces will make the impulse feel righteous and urgent. Mercury retrograde will scramble the execution. Wait for Mars to gain some traction in Pisces around the second week of March before engaging emotionally charged communication. Here is how to navigate the next 24 hours. I want to be specific because specificity is what separates useful guidance from platitudes. First, expect the resistance to peak today and tonight. Whatever the eclipse is about to illuminate will push back hardest between now and tomorrow morning. Do not mistake the intensity of today for a sign that you are on the wrong track. The intensity is proportional to the significance of what is shifting. If you feel an overwhelming urge to reverse a decision you made this week, to go back to something you decided to leave, to re-engage a pattern you identified as expired, notice the urge without acting on it. Write it down. Say, I notice the pull toward the old pattern. I'm choosing to observe it without following it. That simple act of naming the resistance reduces its power by about half. The other half dissolves on its own once the eclipse passes. Second, let Mars in Pisces set your approach. Soft hands, open posture, receive instead of act. The eclipse does not need your participation. It needs your attention. If you feel the impulse to do something, to prepare, to protect, to control, redirect that energy into observation. Watch what happens around you. Listen to what conversations arise. Note what dreams delivered last night and what they contained. The most productive eclipse eve activity is not ritual or intention setting. It is documentation. Write down the state of things as they are right now. What you feel, what you see, what has been on your mind. That documentation becomes invaluable in a week when you look back and realize the eclipse shifted exactly what you recorded today. Third, if you did the work from yesterday's video and identified your eclipse house, reread what you wrote about what you suspect the eclipse will find. Does it still feel accurate, or has something shifted since yesterday? If it shifted, note the shift. The eclipse field is already operating, and the adjustments your perception makes in the final 24 hours are data. The eclipse does not begin tomorrow at the exact moment of astronomical perfection. It has been building all week. Today is the crescendo before the downbeat. Fourth, rest. Sleep if you can. The body processes eclipse energy most efficiently during sleep. If sleep is disrupted tonight, do not fight the insomnia. Use it. Sit with what surfaces. Write it down. The material that arrives during eclipse eve insomnia is almost always significant. I have a personal rule during eclipse eves. I keep a pen and paper next to the bed, not a phone, paper, because the things that surface at 3 in the morning during an eclipse window have a quality that disappears the moment you open a screen. The screen light disrupts the reception. Paper keeps the channel open. We started this journey with a conjunction, February 20th. Something crystallized. The fog lifted. A structure appeared. And then for 10 days, that structure was tested, immersed, disrupted, read by eclipse mechanics, and mapped to your personal chart. Tomorrow, the circle closes. The eclipse removes the last layer of borrowed light and shows you what actually survived the entire sequence. The structure that is still standing after 10 days of testing is the one you build on. The parts that were carried by borrowed light scatter, and what remains is yours, real, tested, durable. I want to name what this journey has been, because most people have been living it day by day without seeing the arc. The conjunction was the planning. The retrograde was the testing. The Pisces immersion was the soaking. Mars-Uranus was the pruning. The eclipse mechanics video was the understanding. The personal map was the targeting. Eclipse eve today is the vigil. And tomorrow, the harvest. Not a harvest of abundance necessarily, a harvest of truth. What actually grew from what was planted, what survived the tests, what is real when the light changes. That is what the eclipse delivers. And after 11 days of walking this sequence together, you are more prepared to receive it than most people will be. Tomorrow, I will be here for the eclipse itself, walking through it in real time. What to observe during the hours of the eclipse, what the first signals look like, how to read what surfaces without reacting to it prematurely, and how to integrate what the eclipse reveals into the weeks that follow. Stay with me through the final gate. The eclipse window opens tomorrow, and what it shows you will define the next 6 months. We are one day away.